there is little change. First, we will have views from Professor Jimal Unni, and the presentations from the participants, as told earlier, will be after this session. I welcome Professor Unni for our views on this rural outlook. Thanks.
So good morning, everyone. So let me say that I'm an economist by training. And as an economist, I would like to, while I will be talking about what Mr. Sridhar was speaking about earlier, producer companies and markets and so on, I would like to present a broader macro picture of why this thing is crucial for us in India before we come down to the actual situation of, because you people are all very much on the ground, micro people, involved in micro. So let me first say that there is a macro scenario which we have to worry about, into which this micro scenario is going to fit. And that's the other thing. So and one of the broad thing that I'm going to say is that we spoke about government schemes and how they're working, not working, etc., etc. And he finally came to these farmer producer organizations. Basic idea is to, if you want development of the people, one is participation, which came out in the kind of discussions that you were saying. Participation of the people, participation of the communities. Without that, nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to really reach the schemes are going to remain schemes, and that's the end of the story. But participation, and the whole idea is to try and harness the markets. Because with all the reforms that the government has been doing and the opening up of markets, the markets are beginning to function. Now, how do we get these markets to function? How do we harness these markets to allow the poor to be able to negotiate that market? That is the broad story. In that, producer companies come, regulation of markets are important, APMC and the act and the changing of that is important. The recently announced e-national markets, agricultural markets, that becomes important. How can we facilitate? How can you facilitate? You're the government. We are nobody. We are only the observers. We are academics. We just watch. And once in a while give some recommendations. How can it be facilitated? How can the government and the government officers facilitate this is the broad story. But to come to that story, I will I don't know how do I use this? Let me just give you some facts about rural India. One of the things is that the size of the incomes and employment coming from rural areas is declining. Now, would you say that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad thing.
Why is it a bad thing? It could be a good thing. It could be the urbanization process.
It leads to migration.
It could be the migration process. What is bad about,
Though it is coming down, actually the percentage of proportion of poverty, people living in rural areas have not come down.
Right.
So it's bad in the sense for the rural
That's
context.
right. So what is bad about it is that the incomes are coming down, the share of income is coming down, but the share of people working there is not coming down fast enough. Which means that the income per person is continuing to remain smaller and smaller. So if they are migrating, if there is more urbanization, and some of the urbanization is not migration, incidentally, some of the urbanization is just change of the very concentrated areas which were rural into urban. So there's a whole reclassification also happening. There are new towns happening, which are in broadly was earlier rural areas. So urbanization is not just a migration of people from one to the other. It's more than that. It might be a reclassification of areas and so on. So that is what is the bad thing. When the share of employment is not declining as fast. When agriculture is shedding employment, so that increasingly larger and larger amount of, which is again not a bad thing. If non-agricultural employment is growing very fast and being productive and being able to provide greater amount of income per worker to the rural population, that's a good thing. But if it is not, and agriculture is being displaced, then there is an issue. So that is one of the crisis kind of situation there. The other thing is that, okay, I'll not emphasize on this, that a lot of the activities are not regulated, are not registered, are not coming under all your regulatory framework. So they are informal. Agriculture, of course, very large, but so is it services and so is it manufacturing. This is an all-India picture. Now, if you look at the non-agricultural sector, there's one thing that I want to emphasize in both agriculture and non-agriculture is the smallness of the producer groups, the smallness of the size of the production unit, the enterprise unit. So this is manufacturing sector as an example. You will see it is similar if we look at the, I don't know, being an economist, I'm in the habit of reading numbers and this makes a lot of sense to me. But if you look at the manufacturing, the factory sector, which is the registered organized sector, and you look at the unorganized sector, which is unregulated, it is not unregulated fully, but it is an unregistered sector. You see, these are the number of enterprises and the amount of employment. Now, if you look at it, all of these factories and all the registered units constitutes only less than 1% of, this is all India, it's not rural, 1% of the manufacturing sector. Actually consists only of 1% of the manufacturing sector. And the amount of employment it is providing, it used to be 25. If I taken an earlier year than 2002, about 25% of the manufacturing sector employment used to be from this so-called organized factory sector. But today it's less than 20% in 2005-07, and increasingly it is going down. So this so-called organized sector, the one that is unionized, the one that is getting the pay commissions, which is getting all other benefits and being regulated, all their labor is regulated, all this thing about labor reforms and all, it affects only this proportion of the workers in the manufacturing sector. And the rest of it is in an unregulated, in an unregistered sector. Even then, what is even more important is these, what they are calling OAEs, that is own account enterprises. These are enterprises which are what we call self-employed. They are not hiring workers on a regular basis. Most of it is being done on a self-employed basis. That constitutes the real India, whether it is rural or it is urban. A very large proportion, if you see all India, it's 85%. 85% of the enterprises and 50% of the workers remain in these so-called own account enterprises, which are operated by family enterprises. Now, what are the issues coming out of this is this thing that I will finally highlight. Now, these own account enterprises, which is constituting 85% of your enterprises in manufacturing, which is constituting 50% of your workers in manufacturing. Services also would be similar. Might just be a few percentage this side and that, but if you take all of services, it would more or less look like this. There are two major issues there. One is the investment there, the capital size, the value of assets is very small. In fact, the value of assets of greater than 1 lakh is only 8% of the own account enterprises would have. And a very large majority actually invest less than 5,000 rupees. What can you do with that kind of an investment? What kind of income can you produce with that kind of an investment? So, value of assets of less than 5,000 rupees is 35% of the own account enterprises. What can that kind of an enterprise do? How sustainable would it be? Is it viable unit? Is it an unviable unit? What is this kind of, this is the macro dimension of manufacturing. So these could be the textiles, it could be your Madhubani people, it could be your, all kinds of activities which are going on in rural areas. And then, so that's the value of asset. And the other thing is that the value addition, that is basically it is the output minus the input, but the value addition which is being created by these enterprises is extremely small. There is a very low value addition in these. So again, it comes to a point where these things are not really viable units. So what is the solution to that? What could be a solution to that? What can be done for? Obviously, what does it mean? It means that they can't access markets. They can't get a better price for their inputs. They can't get a better price. It was shown by the Manipur presentation, and there was a couple of presentations that we saw earlier, and I'm sure the next two that we'll see immediately after I stop speaking would give you the same kind of situation where the asset size is so small, the income that they can produce, the output that they can produce per enterprise is really small. The input prices they'll get will always be higher, because if you buy inputs in bulk, you get a better price. The output price that you can manage, there was the story about how these two types of traders were coming and taking the products in bulk and then selling them at pigeons. That is the reality of the situation, and that is what these macro pictures are showing. Now the point is that dimension of that is very, very, very large. It's not just some little, tiny little tribal community somewhere which is suffering that. It's not that. It is in most of the states, in most of the areas. And the last thing about the manufacturing is that we think of people, workers, as working in a conventional place of work. Like I work in an educational institution. You people work in government offices. We all have an office, we have a place of work. But a very large majority of the people, the workers in India, do not have any such conventional place to work. Many of them are operating out of their houses. Even if you take the overall, this is the overall thing, they could be working in their own homes, in their homestead, that is the area around their homes. They could be working on the streets, they could be working in construction sites, they could be working on their own farms or on other person's farm, and so on. So and another thing about this is a lot of it is actually working in the home. 40% of these so-called own account enterprises, that small ones which are family-based, are operating from their own premises. So again, if you take the value of capital being invested, the value addition being happening there, and the fact that they're only working in their own kind of a place, it just adds to this whole vulnerable kind of situation in which they are. The fact that they're able to really get very little incomes per human being there in those households, workers and the whole family as a whole.
Ma'am, can I have an information?
Yeah.
This OAE, this on.
Where is the person? Can you just put up your hand? Yeah.
This how much is the percentage which is outside or unorganized and organized sectors left out?
I mean,
Of course, within the unorganized sectors, the only family workers constitute a quite sizable amount. That is fine. But how much is outside these unorganized sectors, which are poor?
If you take manufacturing, this is what it is, 20%. In manufacturing alone.
But in one way, it is encouraging. It's not distressing. It's encouraging that they are working and they are earning something.
Oh, sure. Now, I'm not saying that they should not be working, incidentally. I'm just saying, what can we do? What can the government do? What can private do to help them to harness markets better and help them in the process when everybody else is benefiting from the market? Is there any way you can make these people benefit from the market? There's no other way today. It is through the markets that you have to do this. The government giving doles, just forget it. It's going to be there for a little while. It's going to help a few people to go above the poverty line. Day after tomorrow, they'll be below the poverty line. One incident of illness is enough. Any household will drop below the poverty line. Those doles are not working. Your NREGA is a fantastic thing. It is raising the wages as a whole. It is raising the agricultural wages. It might be raising the non-agricultural wages. To that extent, it's fantastic. But other than that, it's going nothing to the people. Though that generation of people who do NREGA work, the next generation of people are going to do NREGA work only. There's no skill being attributed to them. They're not doing a damn thing. They're just digging holes and filling it up. They might be, if it is integrated well, creating assets. They might be creating assets. Now private is allowed on private weaker sections. They might be creating assets in those. That can have a positive effect. But otherwise, there isn't much. Right? Or if you're creating roads, that's a good thing. So now let's just go to the agricultural sector. The same situation, only the nature of the thing is different. The size of holdings. The size of holdings has been going down in a huge way over time. So this is the size of land holdings of rural households. So if you look at households which are having less than 0.4 hectares, which is like 1 acre or less, it has been growing from 50% in 83 to close to 70% in 2008-9. There are 100 reasons you can all imagine. Fragmentation due to the size of the population, splitting of households, and so on and so forth. A lot of such households are also having to do all kinds of other activities. Nobody can sustain their their household or their household incomes from this. So they'll be doing other non-agricultural activities, they'll be doing agricultural labor and so on and so forth. So the same thing which I was showing you as this on account workers in the manufacturing sector, the same thing is in the rural areas, small size of holdings, all right? The other thing is, the positive thing is a changing nature of the agriculture today, and that is where we have to worry about the market. The crop production is kind of standing still. Cereals are kind of going down. The thing that is going up is livestock. So you have your, which includes dairy, but it includes poultry, it could include piggery, it could include all kinds of things. So over a period of time, gross value addition coming from agriculture is kind of stagnant. But within that, you have, crop cultivation remains just stagnant. We'll just see which crops are growing and which are not. And then it is livestock is one of the sectors which is a growing sector in the within the agricultural sector. There is another, yeah.
Previous slide. Agriculture is stagnant, fishing is growing, but forestry and logging is declining. In spite, government is implementing FRA since last 3 years in a very big way. Why this is happening?
That I don't know. That we have to ask forest officers if they are here, and what is happening in these forest areas, and whether it is just the forest area itself declining.
Yeah, we have 11 trees per person, India. 11 trees per person.
Does that include Bangalore?
Or pan India, and USA has 10,000 trees per person.
Canada has much more.
Canada has much more than that.
Sure. So I have no clue why that's declining. It could be that the area under forest itself is declining. It could be degradation. It could be all kinds of malpractices going on there. It could be anything. I'm not sure why it is declining, but as a proportion, this incidentally it's a proportion. So if your livestock is exploding, if your fishing is improving, in fact fishing is another activity, given inland fishing is another activity that can be done on this common kind of thing, collective kind of thing, which can really improve income.
No, ma'am, one of the reason for, ma'am, Dr. Chandrakant, one of the reason for increasing this fishing sector and as you said, livestock sector is also growing, just because there is a growing pressure on land. People are shifting to other modes of livelihood. That may be one reason. In forestry, there may be a number of reasons can be attributed for reduction in this forestry and.
Livestock makes a lot of sense because it requires much less land, like you're saying, and it's also it's less dependent on, it is dependent still on rain and all that. Assured profits and assured income. If it is the dairy sector is actually working, then they actually get daily income.
No, it's a market phenomenon. It's a market phenomenon. The farmer gets money every day, and there are a lot of companies and cooperative societies. Now it's an organized market in a way.
Absolutely.
And the demand is growing because urban population is growing. The income per capita income is growing. So people are now shifting to fish. Meat and milk and eggs, and that is again it's a market phenomenon.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then if we look at the crops. It's rice and cereals which are coming down. Pulses is a big difficulty for us. We should be having a lot more pulses. Things are moving out of pulses. They may be moving out of pulses and towards. It might be moving towards any other crop. It could be moving for more cash crops, basically. Oilseeds is another issue. It is sort of looking okay at this point in time. Oilseeds, it seems to be improving. But otherwise, oilseeds like groundnut and things like that in Gujarat has really been replaced by cotton. So Saurashtra region, which 30 years ago, when I first came to Gujarat 35 years ago, it was completely groundnut, and now it's cotton. So of course, this year I'm hearing that some of groundnut is coming back. The thing here which is growing is horticulture, and horticulture, fruits and vegetables. Now, fruits and vegetables is another big thing, just like milk, they are perishable commodities, and marketing them in quick movement is a challenge. And unless and until that is done, you hear how in some of the slightly more hilly areas, there's so much of apple and they just सड़ जाता है वहाँ पे वो फेंक देते हैं, etc. stories. So here again the challenge is marketing these things out of those places. If it is growing the way it is growing, horticulture is growing in this fashion, fruits and vegetables, and then the demand for this is again very specific. There are very often big towns which are demanding these fruits and vegetables. So how does one quick movement of, want to say something?
High yielding plants, that is one of the reasons.
Yes, definitely new varieties of all these things, all these horticulture products, and which are being implemented, sort of planted and so on and so forth, could be the reason for this. And then of course the markets. There is a market there. They are getting a better price, and they are able to, if they are able to move this commodity, it's a very and anyway, rice and wheat and all have reached their plateau, and rice is having a huge problem of water. So that's another thing which is. So this is the broad scenario in rural areas. Now, can you think of some solution in terms of markets for these things? Are there any, what would you think of if you have small size, you have fragmented lands, you have small size of manufacturing and services, and you have growth of particular components within that? What could you sort of come up with as a solution for this?
Formation of cooperative societies, ma'am?
Right, some kind of collective organization. One of the things was what Mr. Sridhar was talking about.
Supply chain.
Processing, correct.
Food processing.
Marketing mechanisms, right.
Ma'am, farmer information centers at every taluka level.
What will that do?
Because we don't know how much the sector is under cultivation. Particular pulses are now going down, or rice is going down. So farmers are not aware that which crop to be taken.
Supply chain management.
Won't that be affected by the prices?
It will be affected, but generally unawareness, because now I have seen the pulses are going on, so everybody is after cultivating pulses. Or the tomatoes were going on, going high, so everybody was going after the
So they're responding to the market.
It is, yes.
In terms of
but
prices.
then again the prices fall.
Yeah, there's a gap.
Supply chain.
Yeah.
Correct. Supply chain.
Transport.
That is a huge thing actually.
Comprehensive credit system.
Yeah. Working capital, comprehensive credit system, and this, in terms of the supply chain, why do you think this dairy business and this Amul fellows are working?
Finished product,
Do you think that it
finishing
is-
Food processing.
processing.
Food processing in order to take care of bulk so that your apples are not lost.
Perishable items.
To convert perishable
Converted
items into something else. So what along the value chain do you think is required? Okay, storage.
No, ma'am,
Storage is one
bringing the big players like Reliance and all to bringing the marketing system. Because of in cooperative
What will
sector,
we do?
because of this cooperative, suppose we are growing apple in Kashmir and we want to bring it to Arunachal with storage facilities, transportation and all. This cannot be done by a small cooperative society. This is to be done by a big player with a methodical way, strategical way.
So your one solution is contract farming?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, excellent. So that's one solution, that's one market solution. You bring in big players come in, and this is the solution of the United States, is the solution of all the Western world, and so on and so forth.
You cannot have a tailor-made solution for, one solution cannot fit everything.
Sure.
Supply chain management is a big issue. Farmer is the only community which buys in retail and sells in wholesale. Now, the problem is, you are not allowing markets to function in farming area.
Correct.
You are not, as a government intervention, you are not allowing.
Absolutely.
When a price of onion goes to 100 rupees a kg, let the farmer sell for 100 rupees kg. Why you are worried for the 100 rupees kg? Now this is a problem when you are basically catering to people of middle class income group in living in cities who decide the public policies. Now they don't afford, don't eat onions. Who told you to eat onions?
Absolutely.
And as a farmer I said, see, I am
Delhi
giving
should
it.
not decide.
Yeah, but see, I'm investing so much as my production cost. Now ask a Reliance fellow to sell a cloth for less than. Do you go and start negotiating with what price of a shirt I wear from any of the retail shop? No, but I still go. That is where we are wrong. We are basically making those farmers completely handicapped.
That falls under essential commodities.
Why is it an essential commodity, onion? Onion is not necessary for survival. The point is we are completely miscued the whole thing.
Just one, Mr. Suhas, excuse me ma'am. Mr. Suhas has raised a very pertinent point, but why government should come there to support them?
The point is,
Actually, slightly government has to make the things. Otherwise, tomorrow the farmers of Punjab would say that they won't be selling wheat at the price which is fixed by the government, because the price level otherwise would go high and whole of the country would. Punjab, Haryana and Western UP are the basic wheat producers.
Minimum price, minimum support price.
No, minimum support price.
It's not
The
maximum
one demand of the farmers in Punjab, and I have interacted with them, working on different capacities as additional director agriculture also in '95. Actually, they raise only one demand very pertinaciously, and that is that the prices should not be fixed by the government of India. They should be allowed in some mechanism form to fix the prices of wheat. Otherwise, they say they go in loss. So if Suhas technology is to be implied, then I think the whole thing would go topsy-turvy. Then you won't be having minimum support price of wheat being fixed by the Delhi intellectuals and Punjab farmers suffering in the process.
Ma'am, if the prices goes down rupees per kg, then what will happen? Why they need support from the government?
the problem is, the problem is today.
We don't have minimum support for everything.
For everything, exactly. No, the problem is, see, why would I grow? Why would I, first and foremost, I don't have a choice, that's why I'm a farmer. Let us accept this. Now you are saying that you produce this. Now you are in short of oilseeds, you are in short of pulses. As a farmer, I'm a farmer, 3 generation or 4 generation farmer. Why would I go, I was growing groundnut for many years, but now the production cost and the sale cost doesn't match. I'm in losses. Why would I grow oilseeds? Now in European countries, any developed countries, it is a supported business. Agriculture is supported in full-fledged manner. I mean, you accept this. You are not the only country. In fact, the kind of subsidies the agriculture from India gets are minimal in the world if you compare to the direct and indirect subsidy. It is just a phenomenon you need to understand.
Okay, so now there are two
India also
issues
has a
here.
lot of subsidies
One is-
given, fertilizers, seeds,
but
everything.
then the quantum is pretty less.
No, it is not.
Quantum is pretty less compared to, if you compare the statistics.
Their agriculture in a big way.
We have a session.
WTO and whatever other things. We are able to
Please, gentlemen, we must listen to the lecturer.
Sure.
Gentlemen, we must listen to the lecturer.
We have 2 sessions for agriculture, please.
Sorry, what was that?
No, ma'am, you continue, sorry.
Okay, I'm really glad that I at least got everybody excited about it. So basically, there are 2 issues. What I was trying to point out by the macro scenario that I was pointing out to you with regard to small producers not having a bargaining position. 2 ways in which they could be supported. One is, and I'm not talking about minimum prices, okay? First thing is about the collective thing. If these things can be harnessed in a fashion that you have a collective in terms of cooperatives which is working in certain thing, on the milk thing or on any cooperative structure, that value chain issue that somebody here raised, it is getting, this milk business is getting a huge support from the government through the National Dairy Plan or through the Amul or through whatever. They are doing the processing, the milk chilling, immediately that milk doesn't get spoiled because there's a chilling plant. There are factories which then process the excess milk and so on and so forth. That is not the farmer's money alone. That is a huge infrastructure which has been built over time. It starts with, Dr. Kurian, the person who set up my institute and the National Dairy thing and the Amul Khela Union and so on. It started with that. It continues as such. So that whole value chain from bottom till top is supported. Now they have the new National Dairy Plan which is supporting, getting better breeds of animals, because the productivity of our animals is very low compared to the Western European countries or any other country. So now there's this whole, fodder program, they call it ration balance program. Then they have a artificial insemination program, so certain breeds are being sort of this thing. So it is supported in a huge way from outside. Can we get that kind of support for fruits and vegetables? There's a difficulty. Just wait a minute. There's one difficulty. Milk is only one. It's milk. We are putting cow milk and every other milk and mixing it. You don't know. You might be getting camel milk. Any milk is there in that. So it is milk is milk. But when it comes to fruits and vegetables, the infrastructure that you have to create is different for each fruit and vegetable. So there is a difficulty. But any product, it requires this other thing. So there are boards, okay? There are spices board, there is this board, there is that board, there is the khadi board, there is this board. Why can they not put up infrastructure the way that NDDB has put up? Why can they not raise grants even from the World Bank and do it? Can we not do that? Yes, please.
Mike, please. Regular trading rather than preserving the products for a long time, like which is possible for milk and milk products. For fruits and vegetables, it has to be regularly traded because you can't store them for a very long time.
Unless you process and you sell it
So
in
it has
jam,
to be
you sell it
regularly traded.
in something else, right? There is where the markets, that is when not just collective, but this market problem is also a huge problem for fruits and vegetables. So one is the aggregation. So we'll just quickly go through the different formats which are there for aggregation. One is the cooperative structure. And then there was in between a lot of government interference continues to be. It is supposed to be a one member, one vote. So this whole thing about producer companies, he was talking about being democratic, you know, the SHGs being democratic and all that. That is a principle on which cooperatives were made. It is not based on the amount of milk that you pour. You can pour 300 liters of milk, you'll still have only one vote. So it's a democratic. And then those people change. But over time, the states, when any cooperative that started making money got political interference. It starts with milk, it starts with sugar cooperatives in Maharashtra, and so on. And the minute there's money coming there, then this whole thing becomes political. So then there was this whole cooperative movement which said that no, we must have mutually aided cooperatives, and they made a model act. Andhra government did that, and they tried to say that government should not be putting equity into the cooperatives. Leave it to these people, let them handle it, let them, and so on. Some states made, and then this comes under the states. It is not a government of India thing. It comes under the state acts. That's why the interference is easier and more so. So then they did that, some states did it, then they withdrew it, political pressure, etc., etc. Then they came to the idea of why not have a company. Now company is not a one member, one vote. It is one share, one vote. So if Reliance has 50%, then Reliance power is there rather than anything else. So they brought, that is the Companies Act of 1956. And then they brought in this producer company, which he was talking about in the morning session, farmer producer companies. It came with an amendment of 2002, it's been amended 2003, and so on. So the whole thing was to look at this harvesting, procurement, grading, pooling, handling, marketing, selling, the whole supply chain of agricultural products. That was the idea of these farmer producer companies. And they tried to retain some of the, it was a hybrid institution, and they tried to retain, so this comes under a separate section of the Companies Act. It's not the Companies Act itself. It comes under a separate section, which of course I don't know, I have forgotten. So it tries to retain the positives of the cooperative, and it retained this democratic structure, one share, one vote, and also that it is an elected thing and the members have to change it cannot be the one click holding on to that company and so on and so forth. That was the idea. But it has a registration under the Companies Act. The Companies Act is a central act. So one of the things that the reason why it was done, again it started with the milk people only. Again its genesis came from Anand. That thing was to give it, they will still register and they will follow all the rules of the Companies Act. So once you register, and this the whole idea of that organized versus unorganized that I was trying to point out, it comes under the regulatory framework of the companies with slight differences which allows a more democratic structure and so on and so forth. That is what it is supposed to be. And then, I mean, I don't have time to give you the best practices, but there is this, there are certain institutions of the government which have been supporting it. One was the Small Farmers Agricultural SFAC. You know that, and there's this IAS officer called Pravesh Sharma who was heading it for a very long time. He just recently took voluntary retirement. There's a very interesting article by him which came out in the Indian Express of May 26th of this year, and he gives two very interesting examples. I can't sort of go through it, of cooperatives and then one of farmer producer organization in Madhya Pradesh, which looks at this whole it takes these fruits and vegetables and it has federated the way he was trying to show you. That is the whole thing. It's a three-way structure. It starts with the small producers. It federates at the cluster level, and then it becomes a company. Company is only at the top, and that is only to ease the market kind of linkages and the regulatory things that they have to deal with and so on. And that is the company. And they have this huge, So there are many such examples. It's not one example, but then the SFAC and the NABARD has been just like in the case of cooperative, they tried to sort of blow this up just like SFGs, started a whole lot of new ones, and those new ones are kind of floundering and so on and so forth. So there are a whole lot of problems with that. So there are a whole lot of challenges with it. While he was showing us a very interesting picture, you really need to give a lot of time for these groups to form and to be able to then federate, and this way it takes a lot of time and energy to go through. You cannot expect that in 1 year, 2 years, this thing will start functioning and sort of go through to the top. So there are a series of weaknesses in this farmer-producer company. While it is a format, it is a very positive thing, and if it can be given enough time and resources, it can become very, but there are some basic things. It starts with a very weak, in order to be able to have that one share, one vote kind of thing, nobody else is allowed to invest in that. So only the farmers can invest. Now you saw that farmer with that small size, and then what I was showing you, this 80% of them are in this small thing. How much can they invest? So if there are calculations, like if everyone gives like 1,000 rupees and you have 50 of them, then even if you multiply, your asset base is zero. It's very small, so it's a weak asset base. And then in order to retain the the power there and not let it go to the outsiders, they have said that venture capital cannot put money in those FPCs, philanthropists cannot put, non-members cannot invest money in those farmer-producer organizations. So in the legislative framework, while they're trying to protect one area, that is of the power, the other area of capital is a little bit lost. Yes.
Can they have some external borrowing mechanism?
Yeah, so now we're trying to
or
support it through
loans,
yeah, so the
debentures?
banks fail to understand this business, and they refuse to give any money. Most of the banks are refusing to give money to them because then they ask for collateral and they ask for all kinds of things. But now there are NABARD, there's these huge funds which have been done outside of the budget, has been given to NABARD in order to facilitate that. But they cannot give directly to the FPC. It goes through, through another organization.
Banks
So the
give to
payments-
Malyas, ma'am.
Yeah.
Banks give to Malyas.
Madam, you were saying that.
Okay. I was wondering what that was.
Madam, you were saying that we cannot, the market will take its own course. The market policies, market force is there in economics. That is very important. So the basic thing that is required, I think, is that the government should act as a facilitator to bring the interface between the supplier and the grower and the marketer. Because farmer cannot be everything. He cannot market. You do whatever company, you do whatever cooperatives, but then marketing is being done by big companies, whatever. We need to bring them together. They need to sit down together so that they can tell their demands to the farmers and the farmers can grow accordingly. That interface has to be created by the government, and we can regulate that no exploitation or nothing illegal happens. That regulation and facilitator job is the government's job. Other is the market forces that we play.
Ma'am, he is true that way because the crops are also purchased by the government in support prices.
Now let me tell you that this markets is another where your government should be facilitating. It's actually the biggest stumbling block. And the biggest stumbling block is this thing called APMC. So you are not allowed to, this so-called fruit vendor or this so-called fruit maker or whatever it is, the farmer can sell only in his local area. He cannot sell in a national market. The markets are segregated, they are segmented. Each state can sell only within the state. And this is the kind of regulatory structure that has been created through this. Mandis were created to facilitate originally. It was in order to facilitate small farmers, they can bring their produce to this market, there's an auction in that market, and so on and so forth. But once the thing became that, okay, apples are made in Sikkim, but you don't want it in Sikkim, damn it, you want it in Delhi. But that Sikkim farmer or that Himachal farmer cannot sell that apple in Delhi. So he is limited by selling it in that local mandi. That is what your APMC did. So it has segregated the markets in such a big fashion that the small producer, even if he has all that you're saying, he is not able to sell in the market where it is required. He cannot access that kind of market. Yeah, but it's not. Who is getting the benefit of that all over the country, fellow? No. No.
It is through chain of agents.
It's a huge
Before coming to mandis,
Do you think the Himachal farmer can come and sell in the Delhi market?
no.
Yeah.
Before coming to mandis, hands change. Many in the seed stage, in the flowering stage, many hands change. That is how the farmer gets.
You're talking
Can't
with
get-
inputs?
No, for the sale process. The traders, the Mahajans, they buy in the flower stage and
They put advance, madam, that is what is. They give advance to the farmer.
So then they created what was called
Upon Gujarat, is
Yes.
a Kutch district, very largest district. So many farmers are selling in Delhi, Ahmedabad, Bombay, directly.
See, Gujarat is one of them which has reformed their APMCs.
So
And
they
they
are
have removed certain products from
directly
their
selling,
APMC.
directly selling to APMC in Delhi.
Yeah. No, so there are some, so they created a model act, okay? And again, this again comes under the state. So each state then has to make a act. Now, Maharashtra, for example, it delisted fruits and vegetables from the APMC. Straight away they can sell there. Immediately there was pressure. The traders are pressure, commission agents create pressure, all the local APMC committee members create pressure, and then they slowly try to dilute that act. This is the reality of India. And similarly, APMC has been, the one where it is really working is Karnataka. Karnataka is one of those which has done this and has also gone in for the EE market. So there are these whole lot of, there are certain papers, I can send you a listing, I don't know how many of you ever read, can read, have the time to read, have the interest to read, but this very interesting article which has come out in the Economic and Political Weekly, one of the latest ones, where the lady has written about each of these things, and within each of these, what can be done with regard to scope of markets, the constitution of the market, what kind of changes is written into the this new act in order to allow. It also allows for private players, to allow private players to be able to buy. So that allows for Reliance to come in and buy. It allows for some, say, Metro Cash and Carry to come in and buy. But if the state doesn't accept it, then they cannot come. That's the thing. So you are talking about, you're worrying about the farmers, you're worrying about but then you have a regulatory framework which is actually killing them. And it's not that they don't understand it, they understand it. But then again, it's a democratic process. So model bana diya, फिर उसके बाद state के ऊपर छोड़ दिया, and now state play its own games, just like they do the cooperatives and so on. Anyway, you are the people who are going to be in the states.
There is a problem here. Like when we talk about Maharashtra did it recently. We opened up my APMCs.
Right.
See, there is a context there. I mean, why farmers actually sell that produce to a particular trader? Suppose in case of mango traders invest crores and crores of rupees before the mangoes come into market. So they take that risk. Now the efficiency which they bring in is unparalleled. Now by opening up the whole thing, we are not basically serving anybody. We are basically creating a vacuum there. Now we need to chip in.
One of the states which has created a huge vacuum is Bihar. You know what it did? It just repealed or whatever it is, the APMC Act. Without bringing in any other structure, without bringing in a model act, it just completely dismantled the APMC. And now it's a free-for-all. So that also happens at one end. So, it's for the states to think through this process, and it's not. So I'm not saying the traders were not playing a role. Of course they were playing a role. That is why it was working. And the people are able to, like somebody said, at least that much income they are getting. Yeah, they are getting like that tribal case which they told us about these two traders which are coming in and buying. At least somebody is buying, but it's not good enough. Is there some way in which all those number of intermediaries that you have can be reduced and some of those margins can be brought up? can be given to the farmers. If that is the case, then your yields will go up, your amount of investment into this thing will grow, will increase. Collective kind of thing can also allow collective cooperation across, even though I will not combine my farm with him, but at least we will decide that you and I will put the same crop, and you and I and he are all next door sort of plots. We'll all put the same crop so that we then sell to the same trader, so then or trader or whatever other value chain you have created, so then they get the benefit of that. Then you get the benefit of the input prices, you get the benefit of the output prices. So, but then there has to be a regulatory framework that allows that, and then there has to be community participation. So if you want a producer organization or you want any kind of a collective method of working, there is a huge amount of investment which is coming at the lower level, and as government officers, just like Mr. Sridhar was saying when he was in Bihar, they can only stand on the side and be a facilitator. You please don't go there and try to do it. You try to encourage the whichever, like there is Pradhan, there are so many NGOs which are doing this, you know. There is BIF, there is AKRSP, there is FES, this Ecological Fellows, n number of NGOs which are doing this work in excellent fashion in Madhya Pradesh, in Chhattisgarh, in Jharkhand, and so on and so forth. Some kind of facilitation of that kind of thing is more than enough. If the district collector or the district magistrate or whoever just facilitates this activity, that thing can happen. And people are on the ground are interested. It's not that they are not interested. So these are two issues only which I want to flag. One is, can in some fashion we support it in the form of some kind of collectivization which allows the farmer to get the best price and be able to sell in the best market, by both in terms of helping this collectivization process on one hand, and on the other hand, freeing up the markets in a fashion in which. And the last thing, the most interesting thing that has been done, okay, this is the Delhi fruit and vegetable case that I was telling you, where they removed the APMC, the pressure started, Delhi tried it, Delhi NCR has tried it, you were saying that, to delist F&B fruits and vegetables from the APMC. This may be the reason why you're saying those people are able to sell there. They're not necessarily working. Even today, the Azadpur Mandi is the one who seems to be getting, these are actually newspaper reports and studies from which I'm getting this information. So APMC, this thing has been this thing in Delhi and NCR region. Whether the region which really requires this. Now whether it's working or not working is a different story. Now the other thing that Karnataka is the one which has a model APMC, has implemented all those things, including private players to come. The other most interesting thing that they have done is e-markets. The government has also announced this e-market at the national level. But what these people have done is, Karnataka, they adopted the APMC Model Act, and adopted meaning adopted to the extent that the damn thing works with all those 6 components which I was talking about. And then they have gone for a joint venture with the NCDE Spot Exchange people, and they've created this thing through this so-called company, Rashtriya e-market thing, which they launched in 2014, so that they have a unified market platform for trading for the entire state, and they brought into it 105 markets. Yes.
There is a problem in this structure. I have studied this structure because we are buying sugar in Maharashtra for PDS through NCDs. Here problem is that you have to, the buyer of the supplier of the sugar has to register with NCDs. For that you need a very big economic background. What this has done is, they have eliminated middle level of agents, and they have brought in international agents with a lot of money power, and that exploitation will start subsequently. Now in what Maharashtra is happening, Maharashtra sugar people are producing the sugar, they are selling to the people who are staying outside Maharashtra, and that sugar is getting consumed in Maharashtra. Interestingly, out of 29 districts, price difference is, see, Maharashtra sugar mills are selling sugar to these people at 10% less price than what they are selling to PDS to the government. It is a very interesting case study. But this structure has brought in very big financial people into the market, and their exploitation will start subsequently down the line 5 years once they get established. Now they are in the process of setting the market mechanism. So I slightly disagree. Balance, I respect your views.
No, correct. So you're right, there is a method in this. Like if you look at this method of trading, they have to register,
Yes.
They have to bid online. They have to then, the whole revision of bread, then there's a closure, and then that thing is announced and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a
Now
process
you
is
can ask
transparent.
this
Process
question.
is transparent. There is no issue.
No, then you can ask this question, who can do this? The smallest to smaller player cannot do this.
Yes, definitely.
It has to be at some level. If there is a farmer producer company which is acting on the behalf of some person, then there is a chance there would be, farmer producer companies can also be, look, I'm an economist, I also know what's happening on the ground to that extent. Farmer producer companies can also be front companies.
Yeah.
ऐसा नहीं है, grape growers, farmers, ये है आपके महाराष्ट्र में है. And it might really be owned by some one person with having some, you have some minimum number of growers you're supposed to have in that, so you can have that. So all that is possible, every kind of manipulation is still possible, but it is at least allowing that the markets are integrated across the country. Now, and then of course they opened it up, like you're saying, to Metro Cash and Carry or to Reliance or all these big players as well.
And about the pulses like Tur Dal, we are giving, Maharashtra is giving it for 95 rupees, and through NCDX we got the auction. We got it for 110 for the BDS. So this is the scenario which
Because see, this is controlled by futures market. See, there is a very big way where you do not require physical product as underlying security. It is futures market is one of the biggest danger which is manipulating the price. And all these new ventures are facilitating the futures market.